Hello, Peter Galante here with
Cassandra Coop.
and we're going to start looking at Premiere Pro in this video. Some of you in the online sections may not have been aware you need Premiere Pro to complete these assignments, and I'm hoping you are, but this is non-negotiable. You need Premiere Pro to work on these assignments. So we're going to have to probably break this up into a couple of videos because YouTube has a program limit, so I'm going to try to speak fast. We're not going to talk everything there is to know about Premiere, and there's a lot of things. If you have questions, I'm really going to recommend you go to the Lynda.com website, which you all have access to, and I'm going to pause this right now and I'm going to bring that one up. Okay, so we've brought back the video, and now we're looking at the UW Stout website. And if you type into the search bar Lynda, L-Y-N-D-A, you should be able to come to the login page for Lynda.com. And as you see it right here, here's the login for Lynda.com, and you can log in here with your email credentials, and it'll take you to all kinds of wonderful tutorials that'll answer any of your questions you need to have, or Premiere or Photoshop. All right, so it's very important. We're not going to try to duplicate in our videos for the class what's already available on Lynda.com. They're very well done and they're very useful. I recommend starting there and typing in your questions there if you have questions. All right, I'm going to close this up. So we're back in the Adobe Premiere interface. We're going to start here by bringing in some media that students have done, and I'm just going to really, kind of do some basic stuff here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is that you need to know how your camera is set up. So that's going to be another video we're going to do after this one, setting up your camera. Remember, you need to shoot in manual. So on some of your cameras, you have to make sure that the video mode is set in manual as well as the still mode is set in manual. You need to know what frame size your camera is shooting at and what frame rate your camera is shooting at. So I'm going to recommend you set your camera at 1080p, which means progressive, at 24 frames per second. It really isn't going to be shooting in 24 frames per second. It's going to be shooting at 23.976 frames a second. That has to do with sort of the problems that engineers felt there was an interference between the video and the audio when they were trying to broadcast through FM television broadcasts in the old school days. So we don't really have those issues anymore. But we're still living with that kind of, sort of, I don't know, it's an anachronistic kind of holdover. So some of your cameras may not shoot in 1080, they may shoot in 720, but you need to know what it is. So, because you need to create the correct sequence in Premiere. So I'm going to bring in a clip from Premiere into Premiere, and I'm going to just drag it into this window here. And you can click File, Import also if that works for you. But it's very important that you copy the clips from your SD card onto the computer you're working on, and don't try to import them from the card itself, because when you remove the card from your computer, you're going to get an online a media offline error, okay, which is a big problem. You need to realize that Premiere is only a database. All it does is contain the instructions for what to do with the media, and nothing exists until you export the media. So if it can't find the media, it can't find the clip, then it can't possibly export it, and it's going to fail. So you need to pay attention to where you copy your files to. I really recommend you create a folder that you know where it is and import the media from that folder, and don't move the Premiere file or the media file away from those locations. All right, so you have to pay attention. So this is a 1080 clip at 24 frames per second, and here it says drop media here to create a sequence. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you what the problem is. So I made this sequence, but if I come up here to sequence settings, you're going to find it created a sequence setting for an RE cinema camera, and that's really probably not what any of us have. All right, so I don't want you to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this sequence. What I'd like you to do to pay attention to what you're doing is come up here to go File, New Sequence. And you'll see in this list here all these different cameras and sequence types. Here's the RE one, which was that default because it starts with an A. Well, an RE camera is like a $30,000 camera, so none of us have that. But we do have digital SLRs, which is here in the list here. We're going to turn that down, and you've got 1080, you've got 480, and 720. Well, some of you will definitely have 720 cameras. They only shoot at 720, and you need to make sure that you're probably selecting 23976 because that's really what your camera is shooting rather than a true 720 24 frames per second. Okay, so here we're taking the 1080 sequence at 24 frames per second progressive. All right, here it is, 1920 by 1080. Okay, and this is correct, digital SLR. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now I've got this sequence here, so when I drag this clip over to the timeline, here's video 1. This one has an audio clip. We're not going to pay any attention to audio in this class. You can have audio if you wish, but it's not necessary. And if you choose to add music to your clips, you need to make sure it's copyright-free music. You can get copyright-free music from the Creative Commons sites if you Google them, but you can't use copyrighted music, you know, no Lady Gaga sounds, okay? So here we are. We're going to ignore the sounds here. It's just mostly wind. And I've dragged the clip in there. See, if I double click here, it's going to come up as a preview, and you can kind of see that this fire hydrant is blurred. So this student is using motion blur in an odd way. It's not in a typical way. So if I go ahead and play this, you'll see that this car comes by. Now it looks, you know, sharp because it's not moving, and it moves because of the nature of the camera moving, not the car moving. Okay, so the car is pretty sharp, but the fire hydrant is blurred. I don't recommend using this kind of a technique to show motion blur because it's very difficult. But so here's the clip, and then it's over here on the timeline, right? So this whole clip is only about a little bit more than 15 seconds when I move the playhead. You need to make 2 clips that are roughly 15 seconds apiece, and you're going to make your total video 30 seconds long. Now we look up here at this time code. This is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So you're going to make your project 30 seconds long, no frames. So if I click back 1 frame, you'll see that it's 29 seconds, 23 frames. So you're gonna make sure that that's absolutely correct. Again, I'm kind of emphasizing that we don't have any kind of exams in this kind of a course, but every assignment is an exam. It demonstrates your skill and ability to do it accurately. So we're going to put that clip in there. Not a great clip, and I don't have one that shows at the higher shutter speed. So you're going to need to shoot one subject at a low shutter speed and one at a higher shutter speed. So I'm going to show you this clip right here. Okay, this again was a student project, and if I play this, you can see that the water is nice and smooth here because it's a relatively long shutter speed, probably around 30th of a second, because at 24 frames per second you can't shoot at 24 frames per second you can't shoot shutter speeds that are longer than a 24th of a second. And the second part here, you can clearly see that it's at a higher shutter speed and how the water droplets are crisper. So the question is, you know, this is how we really make creative decisions in video. All right, so this is blurred and this is sharp. Now you can see that the exposure is almost exact. So here again, you're going to have to pay attention that the only thing you're going to be changing when you shoot is probably the ISO. Your aperture will probably remain the same, the shutter speed will change, and that'll have impact on your ISO. Okay, so I'm going to move that out of the way. All right, so if I bring another clip in here, and I don't have a matching clip to work with today, so I'm going to bring this one in here, and you'll see that I've got now a person. If I double click on this and bring it up in the preview window, I have a person texting. Now this is not a really good subject for motion blur because the motion isn't very apparent. So at slow speed or high speed it's not going to be much different. It's very important you pick something like the waterfall so that there's a visible difference when you look when you render it out. Okay. So I'm going to drag this one over to the timeline, and you can see that I don't have any audio connected with this one. And if I drag this over to here, you can see that I still haven't come up to 30 seconds. So I'm going to drag this clip again over to here. So now I've got that clip twice, which really you're not going to do. But I'm just kind of show you that I need to set this playhead to 30 seconds. I'm counting, I'm using the arrow keys to move it. Here I am, and now I can take this. When I roll over the end of the clip, I get the editing tool here, and I can drag this right back in to here, and I'm exactly at 30 seconds, 0 frames. Okay. So I'm going to pause this video in a moment, and we're going to come back because YouTube may be limiting our time frame here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to add a title. So I'm going to go up here to title. I'm going to go new title and default still. Okay. And we're going to click OK. I have to move the thing back down into here. All right, so here I'm going to use the text tool. I'm going to ask you to put, when you shoot your videos, you need to remember to record what you're shooting at. What was your shutter speed? I'm just going to make one up here, 130. And then I'm going to select your aperture. And I'm not sure what this was shot at. And the ISO. And I'm going to say 400. And then because this is light, I'm going to make this black. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select the color. I'm just going to make it black. Right? And I'm going to just about take a pause here, and we're going to come back in a minute with the follow-up of this video.